It's probably happened to all of us. You load into a new game full of excitement and then, a few minutes later, it just feels flat. The start isn't grabbing you, the world feels distant, and before long, you are already thinking about quitting. That changes today. In this video, I will show you the history of 6 characters in Crusader Kings 3 whose stories are anything but boring. Number 1. Alfonsu III of Asturias, 867. When you think about intrigue, you immediately think about the Byzantines, who really liked to blind and castrate others. It was kinda their thing. But what if I told you they absolutely dwarf in comparison to the true and ultimate backstabbers? The Visigoths. I mean, they literally had a king who ordered the execution of his own son because he led a rebellion against him. But more importantly, because he converted from Arianism to Catholicism. That king was Leovigildo, and his son, Armanegildo, would later become a saint. It is the same bloodline that leads us directly to our character, Alfonsu III of Asturias. Alfonsu III, also known as Alfonso the Great, ruled Asturias during the late 9th century, at the time when Christian Iberia was still clinging to survival against the powerful Muslim states to the south. But his story isn't just about reconquest, it's about legacy. Alfonso claimed direct descent from the old Visigothic kings according to the Chronicle of Alfonso III. One of his notable ancestors was Ervigio, a ruler of the late Visigothic kingdom before its collapse. Ervigio himself came from a fascinating lineage. His father was Artavasd, who came from Armenian or Persian origins rather than Greek. It is unclear if he was an exile or exiled from Constantinople. What we do know, however, that he arrived in Hispania during the reign of Quindasvinto. According to the famous Spanish genealogist Luis de Salazar y Castro, Ervigio's ancestry ties into Atanagildos, who was the son of Ingun and Armanagildo, the same rebel prince executed by his own father. A martyr, a saint, and a symbol of religious transformation in Iberia. Alfonso himself would go on to expand Asturias significantly, pushing the frontier southward and laying the foundations for what would eventually become Leon. He actively promoted the idea that his kingdom was the rightful continuation of the Visigothic state, basically positioning himself as the heir to all of Hispania. But how did the Visigothic kingdom fall? You would assume it was because of the constant bickering and internal struggles. And you wouldn't be wrong. But that's only part of the story. Because the final blow may have come from one of the most infamous betrayals in Iberian history. Number 2. Master Suleyman, 867. Enter Julian, Count of Ceuta. According to later sources, Julian was a powerful lord on the edge of the Visigothic world, ruling Ceuta and maintaining connections across both Christian and Muslim spheres. And for reasons that are still debated, revenge, politics, or pure opportunism, he is said to have turned on the Visigoths. He allegedly provided ships and support to the Umayyads, enabling the invasion of Hispania in 711. And here's where things get even more interesting. Julian is said to have married a woman named Fadrina, who was supposedly the granddaughter of Ervigio. Yes, the same royal line we just talked about. So if these traditions are true, it paints a wild picture. The Visigothic kingdom wasn't just destroyed by outside forces, it may have been undone by its own extended family. His descendant, Suleyman, exists within the Umayyad world that rose because of that invasion. And some theories and later chronicles attempt to link him very loosely to Julian. But it's important to be clear, there is no solid historical proof of a direct connection. These links are speculative at best, built on fragmented sources and later storytelling. Because, whether true or not, you are stepping into a world shaped by betrayal, conquest, and the collapse of a kingdom we just talked about. On one side, you had Alfonso III claiming to restore the Visigothic legacy. On the other, you have Suleyman, a man living in the shadow of the Umayyads. Number 3. Eustache II of Boulogne, 1066. The Umayyads would have conquered Europe if not for the valor of the Franks at the Battle of Poitiers. From that point on, the balance of power began to shift. Fast forward a few centuries, and instead of Arabs pushing into Europe, you got Europeans pushing back. Meet Eustache II, Count of Boulogne. At first glance, Eustache might not seem that special. He is a powerful noble in northern France, sitting comfortably between larger realms like France and the Holy Roman Empire. A relatively ordinary noble on the surface, but a key figure in what comes next, because his family would become central figures to one of the biggest counterattacks in medieval history and what the game is all about: Crusader kings. His son, Godfrey of Bouillon, would become one of the central leaders of the First Crusade, ultimately capturing Jerusalem in 1099. But instead of calling himself king, he took the title Defender of the Holy Sepulchre, refusing to wear a crown in the city where Christ had suffered. Then there is his brother, Baldwin. Where Godfrey hesitated, Baldwin didn't. After Godfrey's death, Baldwin I would become the first crowned king of Jerusalem, establishing one of the most iconic Crusader states and ruling it as a proper medieval kingdom. So when you start as Eustache II, you are not just playing a count, you are playing the origin point of a dynasty that will go on to carve out the kingdom of heaven. But how did the Crusades even start? Well, the idea didn't come out of nowhere. It was preached, it was organized, and most importantly, it was blessed by the Pope and by his pious supporters like number 4, Giacopo of Orvieto, 1066. Giacopo Orsini isn't just some random Italian noble. He belongs to the Orsini family, one of the most prestigious and powerful families in medieval and early modern Italy. And when I say powerful, I mean it. This is a family that produced 5 popes and 34 cardinals. The Orsini even claimed descent from the legendary Julio-Claudian dynasty, the same imperial line that gave Rome emperors like Tiberius, Caligula, Claudius, and Nero. Whether that claim is true or not doesn't really matter, because with power comes rivalry. And the Orsini had a big one. Their bitter enemies, the Colonna family, fought them for influence over Rome, the papacy, and Italian politics for centuries. During the wars of the Guelphs and Ghibellines, the Orsini were firmly Guelph, loyal to the Pope, backing papal authority against the Holy Roman Emperor. Their loyalty to the papacy did not end in the Middle Ages. Centuries later, during the unification of Italy, the Orsini became part of the so-called Black Nobility, elite families who remained loyal to the Pope even after Pope Pius IX lost control of Rome to the forces of the House of Savoy. From ancient Rome to medieval Crusades to modern Italian politics. This is a family that never left the center of power. If you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications to see more content from me. I can't believe you are still not subscribed. Are you kidding me?
Why are you the way that you are?
Number 5. Sīma Shù, 1178. Power was also held by great dynasties on the other side of the world. To understand the Sīma family, we need to go back centuries to the rise of the Jin dynasty. The story of the Sīma family begins during the chaotic final years of the Three Kingdoms period. The Sīma clan rose to power not as kings, but as kingmakers. The pivotal figure here is Sīma Shù, a brilliant and calculating general who served the state of Cao Wei. Through careful maneuvering, Sīma Shù and his descendants gradually seized control behind the scenes, sidelining the ruling Cao family. His grandson, Sīma Yan, would take the final step. In 266, he forced the last Wei emperor to abdicate, founding the Jin dynasty. Just a few years later, in 280, Jin achieved what had seemed impossible, reuniting China after decades of division. For a brief moment, it looked like the Sīma family had restored lasting stability. But that unity didn't last. The Jin dynasty quickly became infamous for internal strife, most notably the catastrophic War of the Eight Princes. Rival princes of the Sīma family turned on each other in a brutal series of civil wars, devastating the empire from within. This internal collapse opened the door for division. Dynastic states declared their independence from Jin. By 316, the capital had fallen and the western Jin collapsed. What remained of the dynasty retreated south, establishing the eastern Jin, ruling from Jiankang. While this southern court preserved Chinese traditions and culture, it was a shadow of its former power, constantly threatened, politically fragile, and reliant on powerful aristocratic families. In 1178, the dynasty has long since vanished, but its legacy hasn't. The Sīma name carries the memory of both unification and catastrophic failure. It's a house that reached the height of imperial power only to collapse under internal division. And that collapse didn't just end a dynasty, it reshaped northern China entirely. As Jin authority crumbled, new powers rose from the ruins. Among them was number 6, Tuoba Xiuli, 1178. Were the Tuoba clan a frontier people who would forge a new state out of the chaos and lay the foundation for the Northern Wei. To understand the Tuoba clan, we need to look at one of the most important successor states to the Jin, the Northern Wei. This was not just another Chinese dynasty. It was a frontier empire founded by people who had once been seen as outsiders. The Northern Wei was ruled by the Tuoba, also known as the Tabgak, a branch of the Xianbei, a confederation of nomadic and semi-nomadic tribes from the steppe. As the Jin dynasty collapsed in the early 4th century, northern China fractured into competing kingdoms during what we call the 16 Kingdoms period. In that chaos, the Tuoba clan began to rise. Their leader, Tuoba Gui, seized the moment. In 386, he established the Northern Wei dynasty, gradually consolidating control over large parts of northern China. What made the Northern Wei unique was its blend of cultures. The Tuoba rulers were not originally part of the Han Chinese world, they came from the steppe, with traditions rooted in mobility, warfare, and tribal loyalty. But ruling northern China required adaptation. Over time, the Northern Wei court began adopting Chinese administrative systems, culture, and even language. This process of Sinicization reached its peak under Empress Dowager Feng of Northern Wei, who pushed for reforms that reshaped the identity of the ruling elite. But just like the Jin before them, success carried the seeds of instability. The blending of steppe traditions and Chinese bureaucracy created tensions within the ruling class. Some elites embraced these changes while others resisted, clinging to their nomadic roots. These divisions eventually led to internal conflict, weakening the dynasty. By the early 6th century, Northern Wei split into rival states, marking the beginning of its decline. This is the legacy behind the Tuoba clan. Rising from the instability that followed the fall of Jin, they did not just inherit a fractured north, they redefined what rulership in that region could look like, leaving a lasting imprint on the dynasties that followed. We have reached the end of this video. If you enjoyed this, let me know which character you are starting with and who did I miss out. Thank you for your time, and thank you for watching the video. I'll see you next time in Ice
and Fire.